In this video, I'm going to show you the most effective prayer you can pray as taught by Jesus. But I got to tell you, for most of my life, I was wrong about this one. But before I get into it, if you're new here, hi, my name's Corey. I'm an ordained minister and a church planter, and this is RedeemerOnline.Church. And it's our mission to help you understand and practice the Christian faith, especially if you don't go to church right now. Now, if that's something you're interested in and you haven't done so yet, hit the subscribe button, the like button, and that notification bell, because that's gonna let you know whenever we put out new videos, and it's gonna let us know that you're here. And let me tell you, I am so glad that you're here. Okay, back to the most effective prayer you can pray. At the very end of Jesus' teaching on prayer, he finishes with this final request of God. He tells his disciples to ask God to lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. Now, I used to think this meant, hey, God, don't walk me too close to the stuff you know I'm tempted by, because that's where the devil hangs out and he's going to get me. He's going to entice me into those little shops of delights that I'm not really supposed to delight in. No, that's not what this is about. Now, there are a couple of things that are kind of unhelpful in the translation, so let me explain why they're there. First of all, the word temptation is misleading. It sounds like I'm asking God to keep me from indulging in the big 7 deadly sins, right? Lust, pride, gluttony, greed, sloth, vanity. Lord, keep me from all of it. That's not what this is about. The word here for temptation is peirasmon. Does it mean temptation? Well, yeah, but not in the enticing sense. It's more like trial or testing. If you looked it up in a Greek dictionary, the definition would make you think of a scientific experiment or a proving ground. God, do not lead me to the proving ground, to the trial. Now, the word for lead is actually the word carry. So actually it would read, God, please don't carry me to the proving ground. Which begs the question, proving ground for what? Testing of what? What's going to be trialed here? And to understand this, you've got to understand that Jesus and his disciples all come out of a particular cultural, religious, and historical background. And that shaped the way that they saw the world and the world's trajectory in history, the past and where it was going in the future. In particular, Jesus' ancestors believed that history was headed somewhere specific. They saw the trajectory of reality getting worse and worse and worse and darker and darker. And then when it seemed like all hope would be lost and anguish would have the last say, boom, the Messiah would appear and God's heavenly kingdom would break through. Like a child being born, it was going to be all sweat and sobs and screams and pushing and labor and pain. And then, boom, new life would break through. The question was, would you be able to withstand the dark, dark night? Would you be able to stand firm or would you stumble? Would you suffer boldly or would you just bail? Would you be able to hang on or would you hang it up? In this last petition, this part of the prayer, Jesus is using that imagery, and he's instructing his disciples to ask that God not carry them into that trial, that testing, into that proving ground where their faith might falter. Lead us not into that trial, but deliver us from the evil one. The evil one? Now, I've always thought he was talking about the devil here, but that's because the translation, again, is a little unhelpful. It doesn't say evil one in the original language. It actually doesn't even use the word evil at all. That's an interpretation in the translation. It literally says poneru, which means toil, as in labor. The kind of labor, though, that's forced, something you don't get to choose. It's the opposite of freedom. It's oppression. It's dehumanization. It's suffering. It's all the anguish that dark, dark night of the trial would bring. That's why it gets translated as evil. And over the centuries, people personified that cumulative, collective, compounding evil throughout history, and they called it the devil or they called it Satan. And that's why this translation says evil one. Now, whether you do or don't believe in the devil, that's not really the point here. The point that Jesus is making, that he's teaching to his disciples, is that they can ask God not to carry them into that dark, dark night, but that rather God would deliver them from that toil, that dehumanization, that oppression, that suffering. The word for deliver literally means to drag. Think of a soldier who's been shot in the battlefield, and 2 of their friends grab each arm and drag them out of the danger zone to safety. You see, this prayer isn't just about avoiding life's temptations. It's deeper. It's about how we handle the deepest darkness that this life can throw at us. It's how we handle evil. Now, why did I say it's the most effective prayer you can pray? Well, because some of the most popular ways of handling evil end up being some of the least effective. New Testament scholar N.T. Wright points out that there are really three popular ways that people handle the topic of evil today. The first is to pretend it doesn't exist. This is the bury your head in the sand approach. It's the belief that evil doesn't actually exist, or at least if it does, it's not really that big of a deal. It can simply be explained away by writing off evil actions as misinformed or uneducated, or the mistakes of good people, or the intentional acts of foolish people. I think the most egregious part of this approach to evil is that it denies the wreckage and lived experience of the victims of evil deeds. So it's not effective. The second approach is to be paranoid that evil is everywhere. This is the approach that finds a demon under every rock, behind every bush. It's the belief that there's no good in the world anywhere, so you either live resigned to evil's hostile takeover and join in, or you live paranoid that at any moment the devil might get you. This approach abandons all hope for good to triumph at any point in the world, and it lacks the vision to see where good is springing up, like a rose through concrete. The third approach is the personal, self-righteous warrior approach. This is the idea that, yeah, evil is here and it's very real, but it primarily exists out there, particularly in them. You know them. The people who don't think like you or live like you or vote like you, raise their kids like you, the people who aren't like you and probably don't like you, which is just fine because you don't really like them either. This approach is problematic because it denies evil's all-pervasive power in our own lives and sees it primarily as something that's out there. All of these fall short in dealing with evil well. But in this final petition of the Lord's Prayer, Jesus offers a response to evil that is so much more effective. Carry me not into the trial, meaning the trial absolutely exists. The deep darkness exists. Evil exists. Life's worst moments, when all hope is lost and only agony remains, that evil exists. Acknowledge it. Lord, carry me not into it. But if I find myself there, I won't bury my head in the sand. I won't resign myself to its power or live in paranoia, and I won't make my quest to save myself by personally ridding the world of evil. Instead, I pray that you would deliver me from it. Save me. Drag me out of the firefight. You see, this prayer effectively acknowledges it and then seeks God's deliverance from it. This prayer can help you effectively hold the fear, the pain, the darkness of life's worst, while at the same time holding on to the hope that the sun will rise again, that God will deliver you, that there is a someday that's going to be better than this day. Now, what I find interesting is that when Jesus taught his disciples this prayer, he taught them to pray for God's deliverance without giving them any evidence. For a couple of years, they were told to simply hope. Like the rest of their community, they had to hope that eventually, when things got darkest, the light would break through. But at the end of his earthly ministry, maybe 3 years or so after he taught this prayer, Jesus gave the disciples the evidence they needed for that hope. You see, Jesus himself prayed a version of this prayer. In that Garden of Gethsemane, right before he was crucified, Jesus prayed that he wouldn't be carried to that testing, the dark, dark night. He asked that that cup would pass. But the answer from heaven was no. Then he endured the worst that life could throw. He endured all of evil. And Christians believe that he did so in our place so that we wouldn't have to. And that 3 days later, God raised him from the dead, conquering the dark, dark night of death and giving us hope that one day we too will be raised to new life in the kingdom of God. Not a hope that in a someday that would be better than this day just based on a fantasy or a promise. But after that, their hope was grounded in the evidence of seeing Jesus risen from the dead. You see, that resurrection event, along with this prayer that Jesus gave them, it gave the disciples the confidence to face down all the evil in their own lives, both acknowledging its reality and hanging on to the hope of its final conquering. And I think the prayer can do the same thing effectively for us. It can allow us to embody both the fear and pain of enduring evil, as well as hang on to the hope of the coming kingdom of God. This prayer bids us to enter the fray with a realistic perception of evil and maintain the hope that things will get better, not because of our own self-righteous crusades, but because God will deliver us. Now, if you want more on the idea of the kingdom of God, you should watch this video next. But for now, that's it for this one. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.